we will be talking about the conditions of marriage. So we spoke about how to get engaged and the Islamic prospect of engagement. The book goes on to speak about the conditions of marriage. And there are a number of conditions. One would ask the frequently asked questions: where did we get these conditions from? If the Quran did not stipulate it, or the Sunnah. This is where the scholars come. Allah Azza wa Jal has placed in the Quran verses of the Quran and told us that in them there will be signs for those of intellect, for those of comprehension, for those who understand. And this meant that those of intellect and comprehension should sit and study the Quran to understand what Allah wanted to tell us, which the vast majority of Muslims may not be able to detect this. And this is why we have scholars and we have laymen. And they gathered and compiled these conditions, these pillars, these mandatory acts, and classified them, listed them, so that you and I could comprehend and understand like they had done. So these conditions are obtained through a vigorous process of reading and compiling and documenting the Quran and the Sunnah, and doing so with the understanding of the three favorite generations of the companions of the Tabi'een and the Tabi'it Tabi'een. So the first condition here is that each of the two spouses must be identified in person. What does that mean? Ambiguity must be removed. And this is in all types of contracts. I sell you my mobile phone. You say, I accept. Done deal. Khalas. After some time, I would ask and demand my money. You give me an amount that does not rise to my requirement, and we start to fight. The mobile doesn't cost that much. Well, this is what I want to charge for it, and you agree to buy it, and dispute occurs. Islam blocks this door of disputes through eliminating ambiguity. In marriage, ambiguity is very easy. A boy comes to meet the father of the girl, and in the marriage contract he says, I give you my daughter in marriage. The boy says, I accept. The witnesses are there, everything is fixed. After the party is over, he goes and discovers that his bride is not the woman he came to marry. They all knew that he was interested in marrying the younger one. But the father says, no, I gave in marriage the eldest. This is not permissible, and such a marriage is not valid. Why? There was proposal and consent, and there were witnesses and a dowry paid, yes, but there was ambiguity. Identifying the bride was not done properly. Likewise, on the other hand, if a guardian of a boy says that I accept the marriage of your daughter Fatima to my son, or to one of my sons. This is not permissible. This doesn't do the job, and such description is not sufficient, and the marriage is not valid. But if he did not give the name, rather described one of the spouses with a valid description, such as, I give you my eldest daughter or my youngest daughter, there's no problem in that. If he has only one daughter and he says, I give you my daughter in marriage, he doesn't have to say her name because he has no other daughters. Again, this is not problematic. There is no problem in that, inshallah. The second condition is known in Arabic as ar-rida, meaning that you are content, you are willingly accepting, you're not being forced, there's no compulsion, it's not against your will. So this is also a very important condition. Now, I will come later on, inshallah, to discuss the ruling on video marriage contract, because someone might think that this is the mother of all ambiguity, but I will come to discuss this inshallah. So content means that the woman is not forced and the boy is not getting married against his will. And this happens a lot in families that are run by tyrant parents. People who have fathers that don't accept opposition or an objection to what they say. Usually, girls are forced into marriage with such an evil father. One would claim and say that, okay, but he's the father, isn't he? Doesn't he have the authority to get his daughter married? I said, yes, but not against her will. And this was clearly stated by our Prophet ﷺ. When a woman came to the Prophet ﷺ complaining and saying, "Oh Prophet of Allah, my father gave me in marriage to my cousin so that for one reason or the other." So the Prophet said ﷺ, the marriage is not valid, and no marriage is valid through compulsion. However, it is the duty of the girl to oppose and to stand firm and to complain. So on her wedding night or before that, through the wedding contract, she must not sign the contract, even if her father forces her to do so. She must complain to the judge and tell him that I was forced to sign. She must go to the authorities and do whatever she can to change this. If she doesn't, and then comes the wedding night, and she is taken by her husband to their home, and she does not stand up for herself. She does not tell him that I'm forced, I do not want to be married to you. If she doesn't go to the police, if she doesn't do anything, and after a month or so, she comes and says, I was forced into marriage. Where were you all this time? The judge cannot help you in this. You have to make a stance immediately. So the woman who came to the Prophet ﷺ and complained about her father forcing her to get married, he told her that you have the liberty to leave such a marriage as it's invalid. The girl spoke and said, well, as of now, I'm okay with my husband, but I just wanted women to learn their rights and not to be driven to such a thing that they may not be happy with. So this hadith proves to us that forcing a girl to marry someone she doesn't want, the marriage itself is invalid. And this is why we say conditions of marriage. What is meant by conditions of marriage? A condition is something that comes prior to an action or a form of worship, which without its being present, the form of worship or that action would be void. So a condition of salat is to be in the state of wudu. If a person does not perform wudu and prays, his prayer usually is invalid. The third condition is the presence of a woman's guardian. Not only the presence, it should have been rephrased here. It should have been the proposal of the woman's guardian, because the proposal is the clearest of all indications of his consent and approval. Because as we will come to know, inshallah, the marriage procedure is by the guardian of the woman proposing to the boy, and by the boy accepting the proposal. Unlike what most people think, is that the boy proposes to the girl or to the girl's father, and then the father says, yes, okay, I agree. They think that this is a normal procedure. This is not. The normal procedure is to have the proposal first. So if I go to a shop and the shopkeeper tells me, buy from me this piece of cloth for $10, this is a proposal. I can say in response, I accept, or I do. This is acceptance. Khalas, deal is done. Marriage is done. So the proposal of the guardian is essential. It's a condition. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, no marriage is valid without the presence of the guardian. So the vast majority of scholars, the vast majority of schools of thought say that a marriage without the proposal and consent of the guardian is invalid. Only Abu Hanifa, may Allah have mercy on his soul, said that no, such a marriage is valid even if her father was not present or was not approving of it. And his justification was that in Islam, a woman has the right to deal with her wealth, buying, selling, giving, putting into endowment. She has the right to do this without the approval of her guardian. Why would she need the approval of her guardian when it comes to her own flesh and to her own body? She should be the one responsible for that. And this justification, though might be logical, yet it goes against the teaching of the Prophet ﷺ, and before that, against the Quran. Because all the cases of marriage in the Quran, when it comes to women, Allah addresses it through the guardian. So Allah Azza wa Jal says, do not give in marriage those who are idol worshippers or the likes, even if you like them. So do not give in marriage means that it's not me who's getting married. Allah says in the Quran, وَلَا تَنْكِحُوا الْمُشْرِكَاتِ حَتَّى يُؤْمِنُ. Do not marry the idol worshipper females until they believe. Do not marry. This is addressed to me. But when it comes to the guardians or the females, Allah says, وَلَا تُنْكِحُوا الْمُشْرِكِينَ حَتَّى يُؤْمِنُوا. Do not give the idol worshippers men in marriage until they believe. Why do we say do not give? Why doesn't Allah speak to the woman directly like He spoke to the man directly? Because in marriage, a woman needs a guardian. She doesn't go and marry herself. And this is the opinion of the majority of schools of thought and scholars based on the hadith. And if I recall correctly, even the top 2 students of Abu Hanifa, may Allah have mercy on them all, went against his opinion and stated that a woman cannot marry herself. Fourth condition is the presence of witnesses. So the previous hadith, the Prophet said no marriage is valid without the presence of the guardian, and he said afterwards, and 2 sound witnesses. So when we say sound witnesses, what do we mean by adl? Shahiday adl. Meaning that they shouldn't be open sinners or fornicators, because fornicators are not trustworthy, are not sound. So if I get someone who's a well-known open fornicator to testify in a marriage, this guy is not trustworthy because he doesn't care about halal and haram. And by the way, if we go back to the condition of the guardian is not any person who is related to a woman. So some people say, okay, Sheikh, I proposed to a girl, her father refused, so I asked her brother, and brother says, okay, I have no problem. No, it doesn't go like this. The guardian must be the father. If he's dead, then his father, that is the paternal grandfather of the girl. If not, then her son, if she was previously married and has a son. If not, then her brothers. If not, then her paternal uncles. If not, then her paternal cousins. The guardian cannot be someone from the side of the mother, a maternal relative, even a grandfather. Doesn't work. He has to be a person that carries the same name. And he must be an adult. So I can't have a child or a young boy who did not reach puberty acting as a guardian for his sister, mother, or whatever. He must be an adult. He must be sane. I can't get someone who's 20 years of age, but unfortunately he is severely autistic and doesn't understand, has the brains of a 3-year-old child. He cannot be a guardian. He must be a free man. So even if I want to marry a woman whose father is a slave, he cannot be her guardian, because a slave does not possess his own freedom, let alone possess the right to marry someone to someone else. And the guardian must share the same religion with his daughter or sister or whatever. So if I were to marry a Muslimah who's a revert, previously a Christian or Hindu, her father is a kafir, a disbeliever. He has no authority over his Muslim daughter. So what should I do? I should look in her paternal relatives, someone who's Muslim. So if I find that she has a Muslim brother, excellent. She has a Muslim uncle, does the job. If neither or none existing to be Muslims, in this case, the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that the Muslim ruler is the guardian to those who do not have a guardian. As-sultan waliyu man la waliya lah. And who's the Muslim ruler? If you're a Muslim country, then the head of the country, or those who he had appointed, such as the governor, such as the Muslim judge in the Muslim court. They would take the place of the guardian and they would give the authority of marrying this woman to you. If there is no Muslim ruler, no Muslim authority, as in the case of Europe or America, so you go to the authorized Islamic center, because this is the Islamic authority existing at that place, where all Muslims should abide by their instructions and they should follow their orders. So you go there and the Imam of the authorized Islamic center would act as a guardian in this case. So number 4, the presence of witnesses. And again, unfortunately, a lot of the Muslims who are ignorant conducted their marriages in a non-Islamic way. A lot of Muslims in Europe, for example, go and have a civil marriage. So they go, he goes with the father of the girl and the girl with him, and they conduct a marriage contract in the city hall, stating that I married Fatima, the daughter of Ahmed, on this particular day. And maybe the father would propose, I give my daughter Fatima to so-and-so. And the boy says, I agree. And they have a certificate, civil marriage is there, and it's registered. And they live for 20 years. Then, after watching my Ask Zad or Ask Huda programs, they said, whoops, Houston, we have a problem. What's the problem? Our marriage is not valid. Why? There were no Muslim witnesses. Yes, but it is authenticated, it is registered in the city hall, it is documented. It is not an Islamic marriage without the presence of 2 Muslim male witnesses. Her father was there. Her father doesn't count as a witness, he's a guardian. You need 2 men, Muslim men, witnessing this. Wallah, we didn't have any. Well, your marriage is invalid. What to do? This is another issue. Solving current problems needs you to send us an email, or maybe book a counseling session, or get me on the phone, providing it's less than 5 minutes, that's free. Send us an email, that's free. Put a question in the question box, that's also free. We will get to answer it later on, inshallah. Finally, there is a condition that is also classified as a pillar. So a lot of the schools of thought don't mention this, but it is mentioned because it is in between, which is the absence of any reason that preclude the marriage, such as the prospective spouse or spouses having been breastfed by one woman, or following different religion, or they were in the state of ihram, etc. What does that mean? I can marry any woman on earth unless there is an obstacle preventing me from marrying her. Doesn't sound logical. What kind of obstacles are we talking about? First of all, can I marry my sister? Of course not. This is incest. Why not? Because she's not permissible for you. She's a mahram to you. So this is one of the obstacles. I cannot marry any of my mahram, whether she's my mom or my daughter or my sister or my aunt or my niece, among others. Of course, I'm not going to go into details of the mahrams, you know that, inshallah. So this is one of those I cannot marry. Two, to widen up the scope, I cannot marry anyone who's already married, which means a couple of billion women on earth I cannot marry. Why? Because they're married. They have an existing husband. So this is an obstacle. Three, if a woman I'm interested in and myself were breastfed by an auntie. So an elder woman in her 70s, 80s, she said, when you guys were infants, I breastfed you for a whole week. So now this woman is my sister through suckling. I cannot marry her. And the same happened at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, where a man who was already married with children met a woman, and she said, you and your wife I suckled when you both were infants. So the man went straight to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, O Prophet of Allah, the woman says so and so. So the Prophet ﷺ, leave your wife, she's your sister. He said, O Prophet of Allah, how can I leave my wife for such a testimony? And the Prophet said, what do you want me to do? As long as it was said, the woman testified, that's it, that's sufficient. So this is an obstacle. Another obstacle would be that I'm interested in marrying a woman, but this woman is not lawful for me, because as a Muslim man, I can only marry a Christian woman, a Jewish woman, or a Muslim woman. But this woman is Buddhist, or she is agnostic, she doesn't believe in any religion. It is totally prohibited for me to marry her, and if I attempt, this marriage would be void and invalid. And among other conditions or obstacles that would prevent such a marriage from taking